Are all X-Men villains created equal? From the laughable Unus the Untouchable to the forgettable Omega Red, proving that some baddies are more comical than criminal masterminds. Kicking off our list is a villain who's more laughable than intimidating. Unus the Untouchable. This guy can create a force field around himself, making him, well, untouchable. Sounds cool on paper, but in practice it's pretty lame. He first appeared way back in X-Men number 8, making him one of the X-Men's oldest foes. Unus has had some truly ridiculous moments, like when he teamed up with the Blob to fight the Hulk. Spoiler alert, it didn't go well for him. He even lost his powers for a while during the M-Day event when Scarlet Witch uttered those infamous words, "No more mutants." He eventually regained a version of his powers, but it ultimately proved fatal. His uncontrolled force field grew so powerful that he suffocated. Talk about a tragic and forgettable ending. Unus's power is inherently defensive, which makes him a pretty boring villain. He's not exactly known for his strategic mind or cunning plans. He's just a big, untouchable brute who gets defeated time and time again. Plus, his costume is pretty basic. He's basically just a big guy in a purple unitard. Next up is Mesmero, the master of mind control with a truly forgettable design. This guy looks like he wandered off the set of a low-budget sci-fi movie with his purple suit and weird headpiece. He's been around since the early days of the X-Men, but he's never really made a lasting impact. Mesmero's powers are pretty standard for an X-Men villain. He can control minds, but he's mostly used as a lackey for other more powerful villains like Magneto and Apocalypse. He even tried to go straight as a stage hypnotist, but even that didn't work out for him. Poor Mesmero, he just can't catch a break. Mesmero is a one-trick pony. His mind control powers are potentially interesting, but he lacks the personality or the motivation to make him a truly compelling villain. He's often overshadowed by the characters he's controlling, and his visual design is just plain bland. Coming in at number 8 is Donald Pierce, the cyborg mutant hater who's more annoying than threatening. This guy is basically a discount Bolivar Trask with a robotic arm and a serious grudge against mutants. He's been a member of the Hellfire Club, an exclusive society of wealthy and influential individuals with the sole intention of eliminating its mutant members. He even led his own team of cyborg mutant hunters called the Reavers. Despite his hatred for mutants, Pierce has never really posed a significant threat to the X-Men. He's been defeated countless times, and his plans are often convoluted and nonsensical. He even got his arm chopped off by Wolverine in the movie Logan. Ouch. Pierce is a generic villain with a tired motivation. His hatred for mutants is predictable and lacks any real depth. He's basically just a walking cliche of a bigoted human who fears and despises those who are different. These creepy crawlies are the stuff of nightmares, but not in a good way. The Brood are a race of insectoid aliens who reproduce by implanting their eggs in other beings. Yuck, they've been a thorn in the X-Men's side for years, but they're not exactly the most memorable villains. The Brood's biggest claim to fame is their appearance in the classic Brood Saga storyline, but even then they were overshadowed by the X-Men's struggle to overcome their parasitic influence. Plus, they just look kind of silly with their bug eyes and pointy teeth. The Brood are essentially just space bugs with a gross way of reproducing. They lack any real personality or motivation beyond their primal instincts. They're more of a force of nature than a group of compelling villains. This guy's the definition of a forgettable villain. Graydon Creed is the son of Sabretooth and Mystique, and he hates mutants with a passion. He founded the anti-mutant group Friends of Humanity and even ran for president on an anti-mutant platform. Creed's hatred for mutants stems from his own complicated family history. He was abandoned by his mutant parents and grew up resenting them for it, but his plans are often poorly thought out, and he's easily defeated by the X-Men. He even gets killed by his own mother in one storyline. Creed is a whiny, hypocritical villain who's more pathetic than threatening. His hatred for mutants is rooted in his own personal issues, and he lacks the charisma or the intelligence to make him a truly compelling antagonist. This villain's name is pretty ironic, considering how uninspired he is. Mastermind is a mutant with the power to create illusions, but he's mostly known for manipulating Jean Grey into becoming the Dark Phoenix. Mastermind has been a member of several villainous groups, including the Brotherhood of Mutants and the Hellfire Club, but he's never really been a major player in the X-Men's world. He's more of a side character who pops up occasionally to cause some trouble. Mastermind's power is potentially interesting, but he's often relegated to the role of a manipulator or a supporting villain. He lacks the presence or the originality to stand out in the crowded field of X-Men villains. This guy is just plain creepy. Cameron Hodge was once a friend of Warren Worthington III, Angel, but he later became a cyborg mutant hater with a serious god complex. He even made a deal with a demon named Nashtar to become immortal. Hodge has done some truly horrific things, like killing Warlock and torturing the New Mutants. But he's not exactly the most memorable villain. He's more of a disturbing footnote in X-Men history. Hodge is a disturbing villain, but his motivations are often muddled, and his actions are more grotesque than compelling. He's a character who's defined by his hatred and his obsession with destroying mutants, which makes him a rather one-dimensional antagonist. This guy is basically a walking mood ring. Empath is a mutant who can sense and manipulate emotions, but he's mostly used as a pawn by other villains. He's been a member of the Hellions, a group of young mutants trained by Emma Frost to be villains, and even worked for the White Queen herself. Empath's powers are potentially interesting, but he's never really been developed into a compelling character. He's more of a plot device than a fully realized villain. Plus, his costume is just awful. Empath is a weak and underdeveloped villain with a forgettable power set. He lacks the agency or the personality to make him a truly memorable antagonist. He's often portrayed as a whiny and manipulative character who's easily controlled by others. No, not the devil from the TV show. This Lucifer is an alien conqueror who once tried to take over Earth. He's also a bitter enemy of Charles Xavier, but he's not exactly a household name. Lucifer's powers are pretty generic. He's super strong and can fly, but he's never really posed a serious threat to the X-Men. He's more of a footnote in their long and complicated history. Lucifer is a bland and uninspired villain with a generic power set and a forgettable design. He's basically just another alien conqueror who wants to rule the world, and he lacks the personality or the backstory to make him stand out from the crowd. This Soviet super soldier is the epitome of a forgettable X-Men villain. Omega Red has carbonadium tentacles that drain life energy, but he's mostly known for being defeated by Wolverine over and over again. Omega Red has been a member of various villainous groups, including the Soviet Super Soldiers and the Weapon X program, but he's never really been a major threat to the X-Men. He's more of a recurring punching bag for Wolverine. Omega Red is a one-dimensional villain with a limited power set and a ridiculous design. He's basically just a Russian stereotype with tentacles, and he lacks the depth or the complexity to make him a truly memorable antagonist.
Number 10. Miss Sinister. Miss Sinister is a Sinister clone who is implanted into the body of Claudine Renko via a genetic virus. This virus was Mr. Sinister's failsafe should anything happen to him, which of course it did. He ended up being killed during the events of Messiah Complex. Following his death, however, this failsafe was activated, transforming Claudine Renko into a perfect genetic copy of Mr. Sinister, but female. She also possessed Nathaniel's powers and his twisted personality. Claudine no longer existed, and in her place was Miss Sinister. Miss Sinister wouldn't last forever, and eventually Mr. Sinister would return to the comics, taking her place. Although I do think the idea of female clones of Sinister also existing is just a pretty cool idea, and I still kinda hope we could someday see a version of Miss Sinister brought back in the comics. I'm cool with there being a lot of clones of just Mr. Sinister, but what about some Miss Sinister clones too? That could be cool. All of the Sinisters. Sinister dinosaurs as well. Number 9. Donald Pierce. It's kind of weird really that I think Donald Pierce is attractive, but here we are. Now you know that I'm into the weird Victorian aesthetic of the Hellfire Club. Surprise, surprise. I feel like people that do know me would be not surprised by that at all. And of course I'm generally into that aesthetic, except for when it's being worn by Sebastian Shaw, of course. Sebastian is a brute, and I will never forgive him for what he did to Captain Kate and Lockheed. Ugh. Donald Pierce is extremely anti-mutant, but then again, he's also an X-Men villain, and around pretty much half of that group of the X-Men villains are pretty focused on, death to all mutants and that kind of stance. Donald Pierce himself was one of the original members we're introduced to of the Hellfire Club Inner Circle, holding the title initially of White Bishop. He's also part cyborg, which I'm also weirdly fine with. Even robots and, part robots deserve love. Love for cyborgs. This message from Amanda McKnight. Everyone love a robot today. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more hot villains lists, which as I said, I can do that. There's lots of hot X-Men villains, and I know y'all are going to be in the comments like, what about this person? So let's do a part 2, and let me know you want that by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister might seem like a weird one to include on this list, but have you seen him lately in the comics? He's a complete A-grade hottie. Something about Mr. Sinister with facial hair, just like rocking a beard, just really does it for me. Also, I love capes, and they're not super easy to pull off, so if you can pull off a cape, I think you deserve a spot on this list, which Mr. Sinister consistently does, so here he is. He's also just a really fun and creative villain, for better or sometimes for worse when it comes to plots. And if there is anything that screams hotness for me, it's creativity. I love creativity. Sure, he might be a mad geneticist, but he's a fun mad geneticist, you know what I mean? Number 7. Lady Mastermind. Mastermind himself is maybe one of the least attractive villains to me. Maybe it's the way that he operates, manipulating people's minds, or maybe it's just his really whiny nature in the original X-Men comics, or the fact that then he really couldn't take no for an answer, constantly attempting to win Scarlet Witch over to no avail. However, his daughter, on the other hand, Reagan Wingard, aka Lady Mastermind, is a certified hottie. 1, she's just overall more physically attractive, to me anyways, but 2, she is also less whiny than her dad in general, which I also like. This might possibly be because she is more powerful than him and she doesn't really feel the need to prove how capable she is, so she doesn't get whiny. Of course, it could also be because Mastermind himself has paved the way for his daughter, meaning that her name and her abilities already mean something because of all of her dad has accomplished over time, improving her reputation as a capable villain. So doesn't need to be as whiny. Number 6. Callisto. With or without her tentacles, I'm just a big fan of Callisto. Callisto was at one point leader of the Morlocks and a villain to the X-Men. She kidnapped Angel and tried to make him marry her, not a great look. Fortunately, I think for both of them, that didn't work out, so yay. Honestly, that would be a weird pairing if it had happened and then still existed now. What would that be like in the future? Callisto for a long time has been a recurring enemy of Storm's. However, currently she's turned from being a villain to just being a straight up badass in the comics. She was depowered during M-Day, but still being a mutant took refuge on Krakoa. She now works alongside the Hellfire Trading Company, acting as Emma Frost's, the White Queen's, White Knight. She also recently got her powers restored after fighting and dying in the Crucible ceremony, asking Storm to fill in for Apocalypse as her own personal challenger. Storm and Callisto are pretty much cool now, so Storm actually did this for Callisto as a kindness, if that makes sense. If you're not reading the comics, it maybe doesn't make sense. Kill them not with kindness, but for kindness in this instance. That's what the Crucible's all about. If you want to know more about the Crucible, there's a whole X-Men issue on it from the last series of X-Men that started in 2019. Number 5. Solemn. Solemn is one of the new hotties on the X-Men villain block. That would be fun to imagine, just all these hot X-Men supervillains as neighbors. Sounds like a chaotic good time. Solemn is a mutant of Arakko who, instead of having adamantium bones, possesses adamantium skin. He was one of the sword bearers of Arakko during the Ten of Swords tournament. In fact, he was the one mutant we thought would face off against Wolverine, but in an unexpected turn, Solemn didn't even really fight at all. He was initially set to fight against one of his own because this was Saturnine's tournament and it was gloriously weird. Instead though, Solemn used a favor owed to him by Wolverine from when they both had to venture to Hell to get their Muramasa blades to use in said tournament, making Wolverine tap in and fight on his behalf. Solemn is presented as being a smooth talker, master manipulator, and overall tricksy kind of person. Maybe that's why I like him so much? Number 4. Silver Samurai. Is there anything hotter than a well-trained swordsman and disciplined samurai? Silver Samurai has been a long-time enemy and sometimes frenemy of Logan, and is an iconic X-Men villain because of that. Whenever I think of Silver Samurai, or when I have seen him pop up on Krakoa lately, I always go back now in my mind to issue 3 of Wolverine's 1988 series. In that issue, we get to see him do some training in nothing but his undies and a mask. Oh, and he's wearing wrist bracers too. Gotta protect your wrists. The other thing I really find attractive about Silver Samurai is that despite being a villain, he still keeps to his own moral code, which is why he sometimes will even end up teaming up with his enemies or his rivals. If something is going on that he too does not agree with, he's willing to team up with even his enemies to put a stop to it. He's not too stubborn. And I like that. Number 3. Madeline Pryor. I mean, y'all know how I feel about Maddie. Madeline Pryor is probably one of my favorite X-Men villains around, especially because you can't help but feel for her if you know her backstory. Often referred to as the Goblin Queen, a lot of what makes Maddie so hot is just her dominant energy. She is a woman who gets what she wants no matter the cost, which has obviously driven her to do some pretty terrible things. The really tragic thing about Maddie though is that at the end of the day, she really just wants to be seen and loved and accepted, and it's like everything she does to try and get what she wants almost pushes her further away from happiness. She is the very epitome of the quote, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." She's deadly, dangerous, usually very unhinged, often filled with rage, but also very tragic. What is there not to love here? She's just so complex. I love characters that are complex. If you're a complex character in a comic, you're probably hot to me. Number 2. Selene. There is something so timeless about Selene, the way she is often drawn, and even her mannerisms and the way I imagine her voice to sound in the comics. This is probably because, well, she is actually ancient. Something I find very attractive about her is just that, her timelessness, her wisdom. But of course there is also the knowledge that she could drain the life force right out of you, just like that. Selene is an energy vampire who feeds on the life force of others. Her powers pretty much make her instantly a great and deadly villain. An immortal mutant, Selene is also a member of the group known as the Externals, not to be confused with the Eternals. That's a different group. The Externals are an immortal group of mutants who are generally all ancient and are often known for being unstoppable, or at least notoriously hard to kill. Number 1. Mystique. Is anyone surprised that Mystique took our top spot? I know I'm not. For me, it's not even Mystique's outward appearance, whatever she chooses it to be, her standard blue or another version. Mystique is attractive because of her drive. She goes for what she wants and she never gives up. She doesn't usually apologize, and although she's a villain, there are many times she has done things not with malicious intent, but because she thought it was the right thing to do in the end. I love Mystique for so many reasons, but I think the fact that she is a survivor is what I admire the most about her. She often does her own thing for her own reasons, and often to ensure her own survival. There's something so powerful and just so cool about that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's also good to think of others and be compassionate. I'm not saying we should all be like Mystique all the time. That would be a lot. But I think there is something admirable in her ability to completely accept herself, unapologetically, and trust in her own ambitions and her own plans. For me, that's what attracts me to a lot of female villains. It's like this rebellion against all the constraints of what it means to be good. It's the anti of what I feel like is expected of me as a woman and just a human in general. And it's fun sometimes to be the opposite of that, you know? Be good, but then also be bad and be free. Number 10. Children of the Vault. The Children of the Vault are their own race who seek to rule the world. They are neither mutants nor humans, though they did evolve from the human race. The children are part of a race that descended from humans, having been technologically evolved over the course of 6,000 years. They believe only one race should rule Earth and plan on becoming said race. One of their members, Seraphina, recently resurfaced in the Dawn of X-Men series, having escaped from Orcus, who had somehow captured her. Before Wolverine could catch her though, she returned to the Vault, where she was also seen rejoining the other children. Number 9. Phalanx. So the Phalanx are kind of complex. If you're familiar with the Phalanx, it's probably because you are familiar with the Annihilation Conquest story arc from 2007 to 2008. The Phalanx work basically to destroy matter and upload it to a hive mind of data using the techno-organic virus, assimilating all organic and inorganic matter that they come across in the universe. So they're basically like the Technarchy, but the Phalanx share a collective mind, where the Technarchy are individuals. Phalanx aim to absorb all matter in the universe and eventually manage to threaten all of Earth and mutant kind respectively. It is only through Moira's regeneration abilities that we know the great risk this hive mind tech race could pose, and has posed to the X-Men and all of life before, in a previous one of Moira's lives. Number 8. The Supremacy. The Supremacy sought to take down and defeat the X-Men in an alternate future. We learn a bit more about them in Powers of X. They were the ones behind Nimrod the Lesser and eventually Nimrod the Greater, and their library of Homo sapiens and mutants alike. After years of breeding mutants in camps to use as their slaves and hounds to fight against their own kind who had revolted, they went a step further, literally dissolving mutants in tanks of femto fluid until they were reduced to nothing but the data that comprised them. Ugh. They would then be stored in a great library where the data that their corpses provided could be used to win the war against mutant kind. Eventually, the war became obsolete, however, making this whole process and the library that stored this data almost eerily useless, which is creepier. Don't put me in femto fluid, please. Number 7. Orcus. Orcus is a combination of a variety of government organizations, some more noble than others. The money and structure behind Orcus has been provided by such iconic organizations as AIM, SHIELD, and STRIKE primarily, with smaller investments belonging to organizations such as SWORD, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Armor, and even Hydra. The goal of Orcus is to protect humanity from growing global threats, which in this case involve mutants. Their plotting caused Professor X to create a task force to stop the creation of a mother mold, which he and Moira McTaggart believed would be the beginning of the end for mutants in regards to the Nimrod tech that the mother mold would produce. However, we later discovered in the new X-Men series that the work of scientist Alia Gregor, who is affiliated with Orcus, proves that this assumption may have actually been wrong, and that Nimrod tech may continue to be a threat to the X-Men even with the mother mold destroyed. Also, now Alia's got an even bigger hate on for the mutants and the X-Men after the death of her husband, which happened when the mutant team infiltrated the Orcus space station and destroyed the mother mold. Number 6. Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was a very wealthy politician who was publicly humiliated by Kate Pride. Yeah, she's dropped Kitty and she's just going by Kate Pride now. And Bishop. She was humiliated when she attempted to blame mutants for her missing husband, who turned out had actually just joined a kind of cult of worshipping and celebrating mutants. So that's kind of awkward for her. Frustrated, she decided to make a very generous donation to anti-mutant organizations and aims to continue her own fight in the war against mutants. She donated to one very specific anti-mutant organization actually, which we'll talk about soon. Number 5. Xeno. Although the creation and unity we have seen from the mutants in the Dawn of X relaunch has allowed them to shut down those programs who would use mutants as test subjects and as a means to advance human evolution, that doesn't mean that the people behind those organizations just disappeared. In fact, it seems that instead the few people left who still believe in them have found one another and created a more secretive organization in the shadows known as Xeno. Xeno was the group behind the assassination of Charles Xavier in the X-Force series, and while X was successfully resurrected, Xeno still created quite a shiver of panic among the mutants of Krakoa. This organization will likely continue to pop up as an enemy to mutants and the X-Men throughout the relaunch, and they are ruthless, resourceful, and terrifying in their methods, successfully using the captured Domino's skin to ensure their assassinations team success. Ick. Graphic. Get it? Cause they graphed her skin? Ew. Gotta get that luck though, gotta just slap that luck skin onto ya. Number 4. Apoth. Apoth is the main antagonist of the new Fallen Angel series. While Apoth doesn't directly threaten all of mutant kind or all of X-Men, although at the end they kind of mentioned it like they would be threatening that, they definitely found a strong enemy with one member of the X-Men, Psylocke. Or well, a version of Psylocke anyways. With Braddock and Quanon both being discarded as names for her, Psylocke sets out to seek out her daughter, who had been taken from her years ago when she worked for the Hand. Yeah, apparently she has a secret daughter, that's a thing. And to find a villain called Apoth. Also, I think we can assume because of the whole Hand thing that this Psylocke is Quanon, but she doesn't want us to call her Quanon, so we won't do that. It turns out that Apoth is a god who also kind of has an army of children at their disposal, and that they inhabit two sides of themselves, one light, one dark. Psylocke creates a team and works with Sinister to find and defeat Apoth for her own reasons, not knowing that in fact strings have also kind of been pulled in regards to this upcoming battle and why she's going to do it. Apoth is a powerful and psychic telepathic villain, but still proves to be no match for Psylocke. Number 3. Horticulture. I love these ladies so much. They are basically a villainous eco-terrorist version of the Golden Girls group. They are sassy, elderly women who used to work for corrupt and greedy biotech companies who did not care about the effects of their work in regards to the planet's well-being. As such, these women decided to fight back. They planted their own seeds within the companies, hoping to infiltrate them over time so that they could then have control of all plant life on Earth, deciding what grows and what doesn't. However, with Krakoa's miracle plants and resulting pharma drugs hitting the market as a result of the mutant nation being recognized globally, their plans were kinda threatened. Horticulture formed, and these 4 women, Opal, Lily, Augusta, and Edith, threatened the mutants and Krakoa. They attacked with a green sticky substance that appears to neutralize mutant powers, and vowed to either cause Krakoa to join them or they would cut them down like the weed they are. I sincerely hope we get get to see a lot more of them, or that the mutants decide to team up with them because they're just hilarious and amazing. Number 2, Merc. Merc is a team and organization that was built out of the demilitarization that seems to have happened globally as a result of Krakoa being recognized as a nation. Call it a time of peace or call it an anxious time of reserved resources in preparation for the war to come. But regardless of the cause, Merc is comprised of former top paramilitary soldiers who seek out battle because, you know, they were kinda laid off, and as such have become guns for hire. They are loyal to no nation. They were originally employed by Xeno to fight against the X-Force and X-Men, but may have also more recently been approached by the mutants themselves in regards to their services. So we'll have to wait and see. They were fighting against them, but maybe they can be used. Number 1, Homines Verendi. While the Marauders might operate separately from the X-Men, they are still comprised of a lot of former and current X-Men members, including one of the original team members, Bobby Drake. And it also includes Storm! Yay! This team is led by Captain Kate and ends up going up against the anti-mutant organization Homines Verendi, which is comprised of former Inner Circle members of the Hellfire Club. Sort of. Also, can we just acknowledge how great the Hellfire Trading Company is though? Separate of course from Homines Verendi, but still, they're really cool and I just had to shout them out because yeah, they're really fun. Homines Verendi were previously known as the unofficial Hellfire Brats and were originally part of the Hellfire Academy. The team also has their own White Queen, Black King, and the like, similar to Krakoa's Quiet Council and the former Hellfire Club. But of course, they're all kids, they're all little non-mutant kids who just want to hate on mutants. Evil children, evil children. Number 10, Unis the Untouchable. Unis the Untouchable, what a wild character. An oldie and a goodie. Unis actually first appeared back in the original X-Men run, making his first appearance back in X-Men issue number 8, which after hundreds of X-Men issues is pretty old at this point. Unis himself is what he sounds like. His mutant powers allow him to become untouchable when he wishes, shielding him completely when activated. This psionic repulsion shield that he can create can be as thick or thin as he wants. Unis, whose current civilian name is Gunther Bane, has also been shown to be capable of reaching through the shield himself if needed, without dropping it entirely. Pretty powerful. It's not so powerful if someone comes and tries to make the shield something you have to deal with all the time, which is how they defeated him the first time though. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we are doing here, if you love obscure X-Men villains like me, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Nemesis. This character rose to notoriety under a different name and is commonly referred to and known by that codename, but we can't say it here on YouTube, so instead we're gonna go with this other name, Nemesis, which is also a very AOA name, so yeah. Nemesis is known in the Age of Apocalypse reality for being the son of Apocalypse. At least, the alleged son of Apocalypse. I think we pretty much know at this point. We also don't know who his mother is though, so that's still a mystery. But it probably wasn't the woman we now know as Apocalypse's wife in the main continuity thanks to modern X-Men books, Genesis. Which is also kind of a confusing name for her to have in regards to Apocalypse's and X-Men history, but anyways. Nemesis, being an ally and horseman of Apocalypse, ends up being a major antagonist and problem for the X-Men in this universe, who are led by Magneto, as Professor X is dead in AOA, which is kinda, you know, what helped bring about this whole dread alternate reality of Earth 295, aka Age of Apocalypse. Number 8, Dark Riders. Oh boy, the Dark Riders. What a weird group. No wonder we haven't seen them that much. The Dark Riders are believed to be Inhumans who for some reason allied themselves with Apocalypse, seemingly believing in his vision of a mutant-dominated world and his ideology of survival of the fittest. I don't know how Apocalypse convinced them that this was a good idea, but they do seem to be pretty into it, I'd say, so I gotta assume that he was just like really persuasive and didn't just straight up threaten them. But still, it's a whole weird thing. The Dark Riders, they're weird. The original roster included team members Foxbat, Gauntlet, Tusk, Hard Drive, Synapse, and Barrage. I mean, I feel like that also just says it all. Listen to those names. The Dark Riders. Number 7, Cassandra Nova. I love Cassandra Nova. With every issue of Marauders I am reading, I fall more in love with this strange and terrifying character. Cassandra Nova is basically Charles Xavier's evil twin, but she's also not a straight up evil twin. She is what the Shi'ar would actually call a Mumadrai. The Shi'ar believe that Mumadrai are basically evil twin spirits of newborns who must be defeated before said person can be born. So the idea with that is that like basically we all before we were born fought an evil version of ourselves. They serve to represent the exact opposite of everything that we are. So in the case of Xavier, who is often presented as being a pretty good guy, though not always, Cassandra is pretty evil in comparison. While Xavier did successfully defeat her before he came into the world with his telepathic mutant powers manifesting while he was in the womb, because of his own psionic potential, Cassandra herself was powerful enough to survive this and eventually would return years later to fight against Xavier and his beloved mutants. Although, in being Charles's twin, she herself is also basically a mutant, so yeah. She's a mutant, but she's also mama dry. Number 6. Nimrod. If we're talking about the new Nimrod, he is well known thanks to the current era, but even he is still somewhat obscure as an X-Men villain, considering that, he hasn't been around for too long and only appears in a few issues at this point. However, even going back and talking about the more famous Nimrod from the Days of Future Past reality, for those who are not familiar, this could actually still be a version of the character who is considered obscure. The main Days of Future Past reality is often considered to be Earth 811, which is where Nimrod hails from. Here, and even in the current main timeline of Earth 616, Nimrod is considered to be a super sentinel, a super advanced mutant killing and detecting machine. So if you thought the Sentinels were bad, woo! Wait till you meet Nimrod. He's crazy, even though his name is kinda dumb. That's why I love him though. Number 5. Harold Leland. Despite having recently returned, Harold is usually someone often left out when it comes to his involvement with the previous villainous group known as the Hellfire Club. Or well, he's kind of more, he's like on the side. Like Harry's there, but maybe in the back. Well, really, the Hellfire Club has become two different entities at this point now as well, with one remaining pretty villainous and the other being a somewhat altruistic Krakoan-based business known as the Hellfire Trading Club. Prior to Harry's resurrection on Krakoa though, he was a pretty bad guy and member of the Hellfire Club, back when it was made up of villains, before it was, just about business and mutants and all that stuff. Throughout many of his Hellfire days, Leland was often seen as the right-hand man to more well-known mutant villain, Black King of the Hellfire Club, Sebastian Shaw. And those were also back in the days when the Hellfire Club just wanted to rule the world. Although who knows, maybe the trading company does want to rule the world. That would be an interesting twist. Number 4. Charles Xavier II, or Charles Xavier II. Charles Xavier II is the child of Mystique and Professor X. Wait. What? Yep, at one point these two had a child together, and in the main continuity too. That happened. Well, we don't really know fully what happened to this child in the main continuity, who I feel like we kinda just forgot about, who Mystique also gave up for adoption, surprise surprise. We do know of an alternate version of the character who actually gets a bit of a story in the reality of Earth 13729, where he joins up with his half-brother Reyes and basically becomes a villain. So that's the version we're focusing on for this point. Charles Xavier II accidentally kills his adoptive mother when his powers emerge, causing him to seek out his birth mother, Mystique. However, she is no longer around because she has been killed at this point by his half-brother, Reyes. Charles II then decides to create his own team of X-Men, believing that the current team has disgraced his father's name, who is also dead at this point. However, he's not a very good guy at all, and instead of inspiring a team of mutants to, be better, he just uses mind control to get them to join him, giving them just enough awareness and control to kind of realize what's happening to them, but not enough that they can actually do anything about it. Yikes, that's really evil, man. That's really evil. Like, he could have just mind controlled and been like, then you just won't be aware. But no, he was like, I want you to know what's happening. Number 3, Horticulture. Horticulture are such an awesome group of villain ladies. I really hope they do continue to appear for years to come and become super mainstream and not obscure. Like, I want to see them in the MCU. They deserve a live-action adaptation despite being pretty new. They made their first appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 3 and are a group of villainous women who plan to take over the world by controlling seeds and crops. In essence, they hope to drastically diminish the human population of Earth to return the world to a more natural state, thereby deciding through controlling seeds and crops as botanical scientists who will live and who will die. Number 2, Lucifer. Lucifer is another super old school villain who you may have forgotten about, or you never knew about to begin with perhaps. But you know who didn't forget? I didn't forget. I did not forget back when Professor X weirdly implied that Lucifer, as in maybe the devil at the time that he was bringing it up, was the one behind him losing the ability to walk. That happened at one point, and I was like, what is happening here? Now, Lucifer Lucifer is not actually Satan though. He's not that Lucifer. He's actually an alien from outer space. I don't think it makes it better. Lucifer is a Quist from the planet Quistelium. He originally came to Earth to conquer it, but was foiled by Xavier, so he basically dropped a big rock on him. I'm not joking, that's pretty much what happened. Although initially implied to maybe be the devil, we later learn he is just a super advanced and intelligent alien dude. Though not too intelligent because, you know, the X-Men do defeat him. Number 1. Cordyceps Jones. Cordyceps Jones is one of the newest villains to pester the X-Men. He actively fought against the most recently retired roster in the current run, before Forge, Firestar, Iceman, Magic, and Havoc joined the team. Cordyceps Jones, however, only recently went up against the X-Men, having targeted Earth by putting a bounty on it after encouraging people to gamble on its destruction at one of his massive cosmic casinos, Game World. Prior to that, he made his first appearance in the 2017 Rocket series in issue number 4, which is also why Rocket was the one to help the X-Men with finding Game World and infiltrating it. Thankfully, they had a direct link to him through a team member at the time, Rogue, whose husband Gambit is a fellow friend of Rocket's through their shared love of gambling. We also learned in their pursuit of Game World and Cordyceps Jones that Gambit's secret nickname for Rocket is Small Blind. Cordyceps Jones might be newer in the comics, having appeared in less than 10 issues at the time of this recording, but he's actually an ancient threat, being over 30,000 years old and also being a giant parasitic fungal spore. He and obscure Wolverine villain Spore actually could probably do some crazy damage should they ever team up. That would be pretty wild. If you're watching this and you're from Marvel, make that happen. That sounds like a cool team up actually. And now we know Spore is maybe alive.
At number 10 is Phoenix Force Magneto. In this reality, Magneto merged with the fiery cosmic force, forging a fearsome union. His quest to mold Hope Summers into a Phoenix host underscored his unrelenting will, defying warnings from the Avengers and X-Men alike. Yet this fusion spiraled into chaos, necessitating a coalition from Charles Xavier, the Hulk, and Wolverine to quell the cataclysm. The prospect of a Phoenix Magneto conjures an ominous blend, melding two extremes, the cosmic Phoenix Force and Magneto's unyielding darkness. Unlike others, Magneto swiftly succumbed to the Force's corrupting influence, illuminating his inherent malevolence. This accelerated plunge led to a world-shattering clash, sparing only Wolverine through Jean Grey's timely intervention. In a universe where Magneto harnesses the Phoenix, a realm-engulfing menace emerges. In defeat, this fusion echoes the staggering potency and unbridled havoc they embody, weaving a tale of mutant and cosmic might on an unprecedented scale. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Juggernautical. Juggernaut as a massive boat. Yeah, the multiverse is weird, you guys. Anyways, the Juggernautical, a seafaring behemoth, is unlike any other. See, this colossal ship being was no ordinary vessel. It was the marionette of a mystical book, a navigator of the arcane. But as fate would have it, this enigmatic tomb found its way into the clutches of none other than Admiral Harry Greik, a high-ranking officer of the Royal Navy. A perfect storm brewed as the Juggernautical set its course upon the Exiles, a group tasked with mending the threads of the multiverse, and the Juggernautical even crossed paths with the infamous Blackbeard. Yet, the winds of fortune are ever fickle. In a cinematic clash, Blink emerged as the hero of this otherworldly seafaring saga. With a flicker of teleportation mastery, she wrestled control of the book from the Greich's grasp and in an act of defiance, hurled it into the abysmal depths of the ocean. At number 8 is Sabretooth. I mean, it's a team up of Sabretooths from across the multiverse, so I'm calling the team the Sabretooth. In an alternate reality, a ferocious female Sabretooth is abducted by Graydon Creed, who's on a mission to eradicate versions of Sabretooth across the multiverse. She's imprisoned with other Sabretooths, all of whom have their power suppressed. Together they break free, confront Graydon, and after a fierce battle, banish him through a portal. United by their experience, they opt to stay in Earth 616, seizing a spaceship to embark on their own interdimensional adventure. At number 7 is Baron Sinister. Welcome to Battle World, the tapestry of twisted domains where alternate realities collide. Among these shards of existence, we find the enigmatic Baron Sinister ruling over his own dominion. Bar Sinister, a realm inhabited by clones and created by the Tyrant's hand. But clones can't be the only thing on this villain's menu, as he keeps a select few non-clones as playthings for his whims. Now Sinister and King Hyperion, two formidable forces, conspire against the House of Braddock of Higher Avalon. Exposed and accused of discord, Sinister faced trial under the gaze of God Emperor Doom's enforcers. A duel between Baron Sinister and Baron Braddock then ensued. Amidst the crumbling Doom's rule, Sinister, edged on by Captain Marvel, joined the rebellion, leading to clashes and a betrayal that culminated in his demise at the hands of Baron Apocalypse. At number 6 is Dark Phoenix Mystique. So this Mystique story is pretty familiar, shadowing the path of her mainstream self up until King Loki decides to give his brother Thor a run for his money with a Harley dose of suffering. During all this, Mystique decides it's time to settle her score with none other than Logan, aka Wolverine. She whips out this Phoenix blaster, yeah, you heard me right, stealing away the Phoenix Force from him and spreading his body parts across the vast expanse of the multiverse. Her stint as the Dark Phoenix lands her a recruitment offer from the Multiversal Masters of Evil. These folks go on a multi-reality rampage, taking out prehistoric heroes left and right. Cue the showdown as they target Earth 616 prehistory. The prehistoric Avengers then team up with time-traveling counterparts for a 9-day cosmic brawl. But ultimately, Dark Phoenix Mystique faces her reckoning, confronting the forces of creation and meeting her end in the torrent of the first firmament. At number 5 is the Pyro Nightcrawler Chimera. Imagine a world where Pyro and Nightcrawler's DNA are blended together like a mutant smoothie. Now this flaming hot chimera finds itself in the company of the Legion of the Night, a group of shadowy teleporting amalgamations created by Mr. Sinister. Their latest escapade involves a rather daring ambush at the Sanctum Sanctorium, but hold on, there's a little bit of a twist. After Vox Ignis uses her Scream of Change to instill some morals and values into some of the clones, the reformed members of the Legion found themselves in a clash of ideologies with their steadfastly sinister comrades, and the inevitable showdown followed. A brawl that pitted reformation against loyalty, and well, I'm not gonna spoil the ending, but let's just say things got heated, pun intended. At number 4 is Sugar Man. No, he's not a candy enthusiast or a pastry chef. This guy's got a rather unique set of powers that'll make him stand out in the rogues gallery. First up, let's talk about his powerful tongue. Now, I know what you're all thinking. How impressive can a tongue really be? You have no idea. Sugar Man's tongue is no ordinary one. It's like a versatile tool of destruction, capable of piercing through almost anything. And I mean anything. We're talking stone, steel, and even beings in gaseous or liquid form. But that's not all, folks. Sugar Man could do a bit of size and mass alteration as well. He's got this nifty ability to control his own mass, which means he can shrink down if he wants to, and when he loses mass, he doesn't just vanish into thin air, it apparently gets sent off to some mysterious extra-dimensional space. Where exactly? Well, it's anyone's guess. Oh, and injuries are no biggie. He regenerates faster than you can say ouch. He's shrugged off blows that would even make Wolverine winced. Crushed by Colossus' boot? No problem. Beaten to a pulp with a metal pipe? Back on his feet. Impaled with multiple pieces of metal? Just a minor inconvenience. But here's where things get really interesting. Sugar Man isn't just brawn, he's got brains too. Super genius intelligence, in fact, particularly when it comes to all things genetics. At number 3 is Omega World Apocalypse. In the far alternate future of 3167 AD, civilizations crumble, races vanish, and the survivors, the Atlanteans and humans and the Stark Self, Wakandans, Mystics, and Moldoids, find themselves under the oppressive rule of Apocalypse in a place called Omega World, a sprawling structure where Apocalypse has essentially become the heart, turning what remained of Earth into what's essentially an extension of his body. His horsemen, now acting as sort of antibodies or white blood cells, would cleanse the Omega World of anything which would cause him harm. Long story short, Apocalypse gets himself a fatal knife to the back by Nightcrawler, causing Omega World to crumble. At number 2 is the Sky Whale Brood Queen. Okay, this one is super weird. So somehow on Earth 13371, Charles Xavier becomes an Akanti Sky Whale. I can't even look at it. For those listening, imagine a giant cosmic whale with fleshy skin and a pupilless human face. It's truly a bizarre sight to be seen. But things get even more bizarre as our good old Xavier Sky Whale hybrid gets taken over by none other than the Brood Queen, set out on conquering the Marvel Universe and using Xavier as a vessel to transport her alien brood. Now, despite being telepathically controlled by the Brood Queen, Xavier's mental fortitude allowed him to keep most of his powers a secret from her. After teleporting to Earth 616, the Brood Queen was exterminated by the Extreme X-Men. Once freed, Char Whales Xavier, I like that one, Char Whales, no, asks Dazzler to end his life as he knew that in this form he was weak and could be dangerous if controlled by a more powerful mind. Get dunked on, Brood Queen. And at number 1 is President X. In this alternate universe, Charles Xavier, who never establishes Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, decides to become a politician instead. And yup, that's all it takes for Xavier to become the evil polar opposite counterpart to his 616 version, becoming completely wrathful, cruel, and a sadistically megalomaniacal tyrant desiring nothing but total control over everyone around him. Cause remember y'all, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Though he's never revealed to be a mutant himself, it's speculated that Xavier's telekinetic abilities aided him in tracking down mutants across the nation. A stark contrast to his Earth 616 counterpart, this Xavier exhibited an authoritarian and cruel rule, causing protests notably from billionaire Anthony Stark. The catalyst for change arrived as Stark formed the Avengers specifically to counter Xavier's regime. Unfortunately, Xavier's response proved devastating as a missile targeted the Avengers Quinjet, obliterating its occupants. This tragic loss included iconic figures like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and other— Wait, Thor? Hold up, he took out Thor with a missile? Whoa, okay. With big players gone, Xavier's oppressive reign expanded further, with all mutants confined to a grim prison in Texas, subjected to his psychological torment and horrifically abusive tendencies, even torturing some of them to their demise while subjugating the survivors to cruel experiments in an effort to control their mutations for their own good. This dark incarnation of Xavier remains a chilling portrait of power-driven malevolence, unafraid to exercise a ruthless authority.
Number 10, Nanny. First on our list today is the partner of the Orphan Maker, Nanny, a low-level telepath that paired up with the Orphan Maker as the two thought that the parents of mutant children were just straight up evil and ill-equipped to properly raise and protect their young mutants from danger. She and Orphan Maker traveled the world searching for young mutants to take care of, killing their parents to sever any family connections, and using her minor telepathic powers to control her new charges. Dubbed the Lost Boys and Lost Girls, these mutant orphans acted as her quote-unquote new children. Her first major mission was at the State Home of Foundlings in Omaha, a facility where Mr. Sinister kept many mutant children for observation and experimentation, and she was able to liberate them after escaping the grasp of the X-Men. Fast forward a bit and we see Nanny and the Orphan Maker attack the X-Men in Australia in order to quote-unquote save them. However, this led them to being overpowered and forced to flee to see another day. During the events of M-Day, just after Decimation, we see Nanny resurface once more, only to be defeated by Wolverine himself. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1988's X Factor, number 30. Number 9, Tusk. Not a whole lot is known about the early life of this Inhuman, and honestly not knowing how he turned out to be like this makes him just that little bit more terrifying. Tusk has the ability to grow in power and in size into this monstrous form, as well as the power to produce smaller versions of himself that can act independently thanks to a psychic link. Tusk served Apocalypse as one of the original recruits of the Riders of the Storm, which lasted for quite some time until Strife overpowered Apocalypse and the Riders served under him. Fast forward just a tad and we see the Dark Riders return when a lot of the mutant population began dying thanks to the effects of the Terrigen Mist. They went on a bit of a killing spree, getting rid of any mutant healer, believing that their powers were a violation of the natural order, and the reasoning behind that was that mutants had had their chance at survival, and that delaying their extinction was not the way to go about it. This caught the attention of Magneto and his X-Men, and the team set out to take down the Riders, succeeding after Magneto overpowered them and finished them off for good with some good old explosives. Check out Tusk's story starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 8, Bulwark. Oswald Boglin was another X-Men villain that we don't know a whole lot about, especially when it comes to their backstory, but I mean hey, that's not the worst thing, it lets us speculate, and I for one love that. Bulwark had the ability to expand his muscle mass to unknown proportions, increasing his strength, durability, and resistance. He also wore these red leather bands all across his face and body, and it's assumed that this was done as a means of self-restraint to gauge the safe limit of his powers, as they would start to get a little bit tighter the bigger that he got. He was recruited by Emplet to join their team and torment Generation X, and that's honestly exactly what they did. The Hellions were successful in capturing the young mutants, but M had telepathically called for help, and it was answered by X-Men Bishop. M then took out all her frustrations on Bulwark, punching him through the school's biosphere, and then flying right after him. As he was about to attack M back, his muscles started to wither away, and knowing that he was defeated, he fled so that he could fight another day. Like many villains, Bulwark did not get a happy ending, as he was eventually captured by the revamped Weapon X program and was unfortunately killed. Give his story a read starting with 1996's Generation X, number 12. Number 7, Spore. Andrew Graves developed his unique mutation at a pretty young age. Now what was that mutation, you ask? Well, for starters, he had a very animal-like appearance, kinda like Bigfoot, but that's not all, because his real ability was that he was able to control people's moods and actions through pheromones. Growing up with an abusive father who forced his mother to kill herself, Andrew grew up with an intense hatred for humans, and began using his powers to make others turn on each other and kill each other. He eventually adopted the name Spore and became a member of the Acolytes, and as a member of the team, countless civilians and innocent people lost their lives. survives. For a time, he was a prisoner of Excalibur as Dr. Rory Campbell wanted to cure Spore, but during the treatment, Rory's latent hatred of mutants got the better of him, and Spore manipulated Rory into an aggressive attack on him, which gave him the opportunity to escape. Sadly though, this escape wasn't permanent as he eventually made his way back onto the island and was killed during a Sentinel attack. It was revealed later that Spore's motives for killing were a lot darker and sadder than we originally thought though. Spore just hated himself as much as other humans, and in his mind felt that killing humans was very wrong and that he therefore deserved to be killed himself. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men number 300. Number 6. Barrage. Another one of the original recruits of the Dark Riders of the Storm on this list today. If you're not familiar with Barrage, he had the ability to transform his forearms into organic weapons capable of collecting ambient energy, and then firing it into powerful explosive blasts. Barrage served as an agent of Apocalypse and seemed to follow him no matter what the task was given, as he was a part of the attack on X-Factor's ship and the attack on the Inhuman city on the moon. Alongside the other members of the Dark Riders, Barrage switched sides and served under Strife after he was able to best Apocalypse, and they defended Strife's moon base from the X-Men and mortally wounded the unfit Apocalypse in combat. After Strife's death, the Riders traveled the world challenging any and all mutants, killing Mesmero and even their own Synapse in the process, as they were too weak to even be considered worthy of living. Barrage was one of the few members of the Riders who survived the massacre by Wolverine because he actually wasn't a part of the team at the time. Honestly, lucky him. Fast forward a bit and the Dark Riders, including Barrage, embarked on a journey to kill mutant healers after a Terrigen mist cloud was spread throughout the world, endangering mutant kind, believing that the event was to be a test of strength so that only the strongest would survive. When they attacked the healer Shen Zorn, they were caught off guard by his display of ultimate power, which unfortunately cost Barrage his life. Check him out starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 5. Whiteout. Now I'm really starting to sense a pattern here because extremely little is known about Whiteout and her past. A lot of it is just, assuming and speculation. We do know what her power is though. Whiteout possesses the superhuman ability to project a flash of blinding white light from her body. This light renders her opponents blind for approximately 1 minute, and for some unknown reason her power only affects victims that she chooses, and not everyone within the range, meaning it can be used very tactically. So like I said before, a lot of her past life is speculated, but it's assumed that she has resided in the Savage Land for some time, and it was there that she was recruited by the mutant Zaladane to join her forces of the Savage Land mutants. In her only known mission for Zaladane, Whiteout and the other Savage Land mutants attacked the X-Men in Chile while they were looking for Polaris. The X-Men defeated the Savage Land mutates pretty easily in this battle, and Whiteout presumably just fled. Check out more of her for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men number 249. Number 4. Fever Pitch. Real name unknown, Fever Pitch was a very handsome young man until his mutant powers manifested and he accidentally destroyed his own face. Thanks to his mutant powers, his entire body is made of an organic flame that allows him to radiate intense heat, fly, and discharge and throw explosive plasma. As the years went by and his powers became stronger, he eventually burned through his entire body, leaving him nothing more but a fiery skeleton, which ultimately led him to becoming a member of the incarnation of Gene Nation, organized and led by the Dark Beast. Fever Pitch was seemingly killed on his first mission by Nate Gray after his energy was siphoned off, but he did later resurface in Berlin trying to capture Abyss so that he could sell him off to some researchers. Now skip ahead a little bit and we see Fever Pitch classified by the government as a national security threat, as he was one of the few mutants to keep his powers after the decimation of the mutant population. He was one of the many mutants to have a tracking chip implanted in his head before a trip into Salem Center. When the chip's true nature was discovered, he had it removed by Mr. M, who he followed when he led an exodus from the Institute. Fever Pitch was later captured by the anti-mutant group the Sapien League and was injected with a dose of the Legacy virus, causing his powers to straight up overload, killing hundreds including himself. Check out his whole story starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1999's Generation X, number 50. Number 3. The Nasty Boys. Comprised of Mr. Sinister, Ruckus, Multiple Man, Slab, Gorgeous George, Hairbag, and Ramrod, the Nasty Boys were the strike force organized by Mr. Sinister to take down the X-Men. The Nasty Boys made their first appearance all together battling the X-Factor after Slab initially attacked Strong Guy. After losing this battle, Sinister posed as Steven Shafran and unveiled his plan to kill the Scarlet Witch. Shafran, obviously upset, attempted to kill him only to be killed himself. During all that, Ramrod was also deported from the country but did make his way back, illegally. Needless to say, this is a very busy group. The team was later regrouped by Sinister and they hunted Malice, who was trying to kill Polaris so that they couldn't re-merge, and they didn't stop this hunt until Malice was apparently destroyed by Polaris herself and Havoc. A while later, the team decided to reform during the final days of mutant kind after X-Man's return that ended in the death of most of the X-Men. Now it was revealed to be a bait set up by the upstarts to lure out the remaining X-Men, which they were not aware of, and they were all promptly promptly killed by the upstarts. Check out these nasty, nasty boys for yourself, starting with 1992's X Factor, number 75. Number 2. Forearm. Michael McCain, aka Forearm, was one of the founding members of the Mutant Liberation Front, a team of disillusioned and rebellious mutant youth. Now Michael is called Forearm for pretty obvious reasons, but I will explain his powers a bit for you anyways. He has 4 arms, hence, you know, the name. And thanks to this mutation, he also possesses superhuman strength, stamina, and durability. Now one of their first missions under the leadership of Strife was to liberate the incarcerated New Mutants members Rusty and Skids, and the team broke them out of prison and the pair joined the MLF out of just straight up confusion. Skip ahead a bit and the MLF travels to Muir Island where they meant to steal the legacy virus data, but while they were there, they learned about the Xavier protocols and decided to steal them instead. The team was confronted by Excalibur though, and they were quickly teleported away empty-handed. After a second attempt to steal the legacy virus, Forearm left the team as he felt betrayed by Moonstar, who revealed herself to be an undercover SHIELD agent. He later resurfaced as a part of a fighting championship in Madripoor called Bloodsport, where superpowered opponents fought to the death. However, in an unfortunate turn of events, Forearm was killed during a fight with former Serpent Society member Anaconda, who just broke his neck. Oddly enough though, he was somehow able to recover from death and made an appearance as a member of the MLF once more not too long after. Give a story a read starting with 1990's New Mutants number 86. And number 1, Executioner. Now with a name like Executioner, you can probably guess what this guy is all about. Carl Denty was a field agent for the FBI whose partner Fred Duncan was a member of Charles Xavier's Underground, who would cache the technological equipment that the X-Men confiscated from alien races. After his partner's death, Carl inherited all of the equipment and decided that mutants had caused way too much damage in the world, so he donned a lot of the equipment and started calling himself the Executioner, beginning his quest to punish mutants who had not been legally convicted of their crimes. Starting off with killing the mutant tower, Denty quickly teleported away once the X-Men arrived on the scene to stop him, but he was smart and decided to teleport to the X-Mansion to kill the comatose Emma Frost. However, he wasn't smart enough because he was still stopped by Cyclops and Cable. Now none of that deterred him though, because he still continues his mission of punishing mutants. However, for a while he actually did some good as he teamed up with the Punisher in Washington DC to protect the pro-mutant activist Reverend James Conover from the Mutant Liberation Front. This act landed him the position of potential recruit for the initiative. However, who knows if he was ever actually on that team, because that was one of the last times we saw him. Check out his story for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men Annual, number 1993.